Good afternoon and welcome to Discernment Radio. I'm your host, Danielle Palli.
And I'm your host, Cindy Readnower. We are Discernment Radio, people and topics to enhance your life.
If you listened to part 1 on our discussion about writing and publishing, we pick up right where we're asking Danielle how she created the idea for her novel, The Data Collectors.
So where the idea actually came from was kind of amusing to me. So we had a cat, Katrina, and she's no longer with us. She lived a good life and died of old age. But she would come and really try to communicate with us. And she'd be like, meow, meow. Like, why can't you understand me? And we would, of course, meow back at her and then frustrate her because we're mean. And I said to John, you know, we're making fun of her. She could be like trying to warn us the aliens are coming to get us, because she had these really bright eyes like she was communicating. And I'm like, what if she's like secretly has cameras in there and she's collecting information and reporting back and she's trying to warn us of impending doom and we're like making fun of her? So that was the first flash for the idea of the data collectors. And then I don't know if you've ever met people like this where they always have this deer in headlights look, like they're not quite normal.
Okay.
So I was thinking about a couple people I knew, and I'm like, you know, they could be data collectors where they don't quite know how to fit in with the everyday. They're a similar species. They look sort of like us, but, you know, what if they're trying to help us, and why would they be trying to help us? And so it kind of evolved from there. And of course, the dark side is, well, you know, we're sending out all these messages to try to communicate with things out there. What if there's some not so nice people out there who maybe we don't want to alert them that we're here?
Yep.
And so it kind of spiraled from that.
So since I actually read the book, there are a few characters in there that I would say quirky. And how do you even come up with their like little quirks? Because it adds to the story. And a lot of times it would make me just smile and sometimes laugh because of what they were doing or saying, or you could picture it so vividly what they were actually doing. So characters like Roman, Cepheus, and Ivan. I loved Ivan.
So we're going to start with Cepheus, since he was the first. He's not even the main character, but he was the first one that hit me, and this is where everybody will listen to the podcast. There's at least one time in an episode where y'all think I'm crazy. This is it. So I woke up one day, and I see like this figure, because I'm half asleep, posed on the dresser, and I assume it's our cat Bagheera, because he jumps and moves around things at night, and I kind of clear my eyes, and there's like nothing there. And somehow in my half lucid dreaming, I'm imagining this almost this vampire-like creature with like this cape on and this beak nose and this sallow kind of expression, like hunched over and looking at me. And it freaked me out. And so I couldn't obviously wake my husband up and say, John, there's nothing in the room, but I just scared myself and I can't go back to sleep. So I got up and I was literally pacing like I had this nightmare about this evil character. So in order to go back to bed, I convinced myself like, well, what if he's just misunderstood? Maybe he's a good character. Maybe something bad happened to him. And so I started this little storyline, and I ended up falling in love with this character. He's one of my favorites because of his backstory and how he got like that. And then I was able to go back to sleep. And I want to jump to Morphine.
Okay.
Because the similar thing happened with him. And you're going to find out the shape-shifting.
Yeah.
Same thing happened, but this time with my vivid imagination, I'm half asleep, and I see this yarn face, almost like if you imagine a Raggedy Ann doll crocheted. That's kind of what his hair looked like. And I see him popping up from the floor, almost like he's floating out of water. And he's all blue, and he's got like these black button eyes, and he's not human. And I basically said to him, because he was like, looked like a him at that point, oh, are you a good character too? And I heard this really ominous voice in my head say, well, that depends on who you're talking to.
Ooh.
And it freaked me out because the other one was clearly good. And this one was kind of like, it really depends on the situation. And you'll find out with this, just like the physical form, good or bad, he's kind of a neutral face. So you kind of don't know what you're going to get. So tell me, before I tell you where Ivan came from, tell me what you liked about his character.
Okay, well, I liked his resourcefulness with what he was able to invent, because this is Ivan the Tinkerer. And not only that, I liked his just calm nature. I mean, it's like throw something at him and he just finds a solution to it and just goes right on ahead.
You know, and I thought you'd pick this up right away because you know John, and Ivan is the German name for John. So yes, when people say, "Am I in your book?" my husband is in my book. And he's a caricature of himself. And I wasn't sure how he was going to take to that, but he turned out to be incredibly flattered. And actually now he quotes himself. But you have to take the normal quirkiness and multiply it by 100. You know, I within reason with him, with Lucine's character, with Fatima, who I also like. I feel like Fatima's my alter ego. She's very just jolly and just loves life, and I feel like I strongly relate to her. Lucine, I felt like she started off a little too normal, and I made the mistake of beginning with characters that I would like to be friends with.
Interesting.
And maybe that's fine for friendship, but it's boring to have people who are just too normal. So I'm like, what can I throw at them? And so I had to almost take everybody's shadow side or negative side. It's like, how can I blow that way out of proportion? And that's how we got the vibrant characters that you like. And but yeah, they had to be likable. And most of them, even the villains, I kind of like.
Well, and Roman. So some of the scenes that I found that I liked the best, there's a scene where Roman is in a bar. And that is funny. It's touching. It's very vivid. I mean, it just was a great, great scene. It was one of my favorite scenes of the book.
And that was one of the first ones I wrote. It was interesting. Two of the scenes that you picked out that you liked were going to be in the beginning of the book. And then as I wrote the scenes, I realized they didn't fit and I had to rearrange them. So Roman's an interesting character, and I can't say too much about him because without giving things away. But he's a researcher, and he does not want to be at this bar. It is to his great misfortune that he happens to be very tall and good-looking with striking eyes. So when he walks in, both men and women just congregate, and they want to be near him. And he doesn't want to be bothered. So, you know, he just wants dinner and everybody to leave him alone so that he could observe and do research on human behavior without actually, by the way, having to interact with anyone. And his interactions are just so funny because he's researching human interaction, but he doesn't want to talk to anybody. So he's served a dish. Then he's like, "Who did this? This is the most amazing dish." And he, as you had mentioned when you read it, he falls in love with the dish, and he wants to know who's the chef who, you know, created it. And this little Fatima, who's like, he's really tall, she's really little, you know, comes out of the kitchen, and he just immediately falls in love with her this week. So he's somebody who never falls in love, but it seems like at the drop of a hat, oh, he's in love again. So he's just he's a lot of fun, and he takes some really interesting twists and turns. And I honestly don't remember how he came to be.
Really?
Yeah, he just, I was writing Fatima's character, and she's somebody who gives everybody the benefit of the doubt and tends to pick weirdos to date, as many of us in our younger years may or may not have done. And so I was picturing what would she think is quirky and fun, and it turned out to be him.
Now, another thing that I enjoyed about the book is that there's a lot of comedy in it at times. You have a real knack for writing these scenes that you just funny. There's one where the main character is picking up vegetables off the ground, and it was so funny. And at the same time, things are happening, like with her car that's stalled, and it's just like a comedy scene. So how did you come up with the sequence of that?
Well, because stuff like that happens to me. And I always find it funny when you're watching some sci-fi fantasy and the protagonist is like this gorgeous woman, not a hair out of place, and just can do everything perfectly. So I'm like, all right, I need to create somebody who's can be a bumbling idiot, where she's dropping the vegetables, the door is slamming her in the butt. These are all things, the rain's coming down and she's got like mascara running down her face. These are things that happen to all of us. And I wanted her to be relatable, because if she was so stinking perfect, the women reading it are just going to be like, I don't like her. And the comedy is just the way I tend to look at life. When bad things happen, I will tell myself these little skits in my head, like this little internal comedy routine going around. In fact, I had the hardest time being dark, and I had a hard time making the evil characters being so evil. Like, I had to do things where you would hate them, but I didn't want to get so graphic, because I don't like a lot of violence. I don't like horror movies. So I'm like, how can I convey this meanness, but do it in a way that it's not going to be so disturbing that when you're done reading the book, that's all you're going to think about. So on that note, it's kind of bittersweet, because the show is going on hiatus for a little bit after this episode, and this episode was so much fun. So for my part, I am writing book number 2 and working with Cindy as my literary agent to market and publish and get the word out on the first book and then hopefully the series. And I'm also going to be one of 3 co-hosts on a new show, Doc Roger and Friends, The Bright Side of Longevity, with Dr. Roger Landry, and you can find out more about that. The website's still in production, but it's thebrightsideoflongevity.com, and you can find it on Spreaker and a bunch of other, wherever your favorite podcast is, that's where you can hear it. So that's going to take a little bit of my attention for a while. And Cindy is also going to be working on some different things. Can you tell a little bit about what you're doing?
Well, I'm going to continue with publishing, helping people, and also I hope to be doing some information, maybe on YouTube, maybe podcasts about the world of publishing and how people can help promote themselves.
And you've been phenomenal in helping me. A lot of the stuff you talked about, it takes a lot of time, and I could see people listening to this thinking, I either don't have the technology skills to do what needs to be done, or I don't have the time. So where can people find out about you to hire you?
SkinnyLeopardMedia.com.
Once again, thank you for tuning in to Discernment Radio. As a reminder, if you're seeking courses on stress reduction, mindfulness, and intuition, we encourage you to visit birdlandmediaworks.com and click on the Online Resources tab for a list of current offerings. We also encourage you to take a look at skinnyleopardmedia.com for their vast array of publishing and marketing services.